Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session on Latin American cities. I don't know whether most of you were in the plenary before, so I'm now going to enjoy trying to be Richard Quest. So I'm going to start running around and asking you questions. That was quite terrifying to sit there and have him. And he warns you about 10 seconds before that he's going to come to you, and you better have something interesting to say. So we're going to do exactly the same thing here, but being Latin American context, it will be much more gentle and much more profound and much more subtle than the four middle-aged men who were sitting at the last session. And as you gather from the things that I was saying, I have an enormous interest, but not necessarily knowledge, of things that are happening in other parts of the world, certainly outside the comfort zone that I inhabit in the UK, in Europe, in the global north, and with colleagues like Tony Williams, who's here, the former mayor of Washington, D.C. Great to see you, Tony, who is now at Harvard and going back into, let's call it, the industry of running cities. We've been studying how cities from the worlds of the emerging urban sort of sector, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, have been performing through a network that we've established with the Deutsche Bank Alfred Herrhausen Society called the Urban Age. And therefore my qualification here is really not one of a specialist at all in Latin America. The four of you who are speaking are, but just as a facilitator and trying to put things a little bit into the wider context. Now, I will introduce the speakers, and we will try and play it as informally as possible, and ask you to, don't speak from notes, don't read things out. You know your stuff, and communicate to them, and maybe we can sort of also cross-examine each other. We've got an hour and 15 minutes for this whole session, and I think it's very interesting that our four speakers represent or come from countries or have connections with Brazil, with Peru, with Colombia, and in one case, in the case of Janaina, both Chile and Brazil, both in terms of nationality and background. And if I were to just stand back and say, in the cities or countries that I've been studying over the years with my colleagues at the London School of Economics, where is it that I've seen innovation, and very positive innovation? I would say Brazil, Colombia, certainly Chile, even though it's sort of new development for me, and Peru, where I spent some time there in the last months. So in that sense, the organizers have been very good at, in a way, corralling people from these different countries and working in cities in these different countries. Now, the reason I find that there has been innovation there is that every time I've come back from spending time in Bogota or spending time in Caracas, certainly Sao Paulo, I come back feeling incredibly energized, incredibly positive. You probably say, you're nuts. What's wrong with you? You're going back to London. You've got a lot of green, and you've got the Queen, and you've got the Jubilee, and everything's fine, no? No, but the comparison is, after, as Tony and I were in Cape Town, and looking at what's happening to a country which politically has been transformed, but the reality of the urban poor is still desperate, right? I come away, and I know you're going to be talking about this, energized because I have seen enormous innovation in investment in social capital, in these words which don't mean anything to anyone like public-private partnerships. What does that actually mean? We have two people here who actually do that, run organizations and get their roll their sleeves up and actually get their hands dirty, so to speak, in making things happen on the ground. So I think the fact that we are able to look at Latin America from the perspective of social engagement, social development, and what are the institutions that actually make these changes possible, I think that's very, very important, and very important to have this, at the heart of a conference on new cities. It's not, we need to learn from what's been happening in the last 10 years. As you heard before, I think we need to learn what we did 150 years ago, because we've done a lot of mistakes, we've got a lot of things wrong, and why keep on repeating them? I ask myself, certainly as a planner and as an urbanist. Now, if I again think, there are statistics that are well known. If we just take Sao Paulo in 1950 was 2.3 million, 2 years ago was 20.3, so it went up, just added a few zeros in terms of millions. In my lifetime, effectively. That's an extraordinary rate of change, and it's still continuing to grow, obviously much less than it was before, at roughly 6% in the next sort of 15 years. Bogota, interestingly, is growing from 8.5 million, so bigger than London at the moment, to by 24% in the next 15 years. That's still a massive number of growth. And just by comparison, London is growing only at 2%, but at least it's growing. You know, it's not like Berlin, it's not like inner Paris, the wider region is growing, but Paris itself is dwindling. Milan is actually going the other way. Detroit, maybe down, right? Very down, says the mayor of Washington. And I think these notions of how you actually channel that growth and how you make the most of young people in the city in particular, because growth means younger people coming in at all different aspects of the city and contributing to the workforce and contributing to the culture of the place. How you provide housing, infrastructure, sewers, education, and the institutions which support that is what we're going to be talking about. But just, I want to frame this discussion a little bit more with one or two sort of oddities in terms of the context. If you think of Latin America as a sort of particular case compared to, say, Asian cities or African cities. I mean, the one thing which certainly I think of in Latin America is intense growth and intense sprawl. I mean, I think the fact that Mexico City, São Paulo, and many other cities just go on and never stop is a phenomenon which is more than just a physical issue. It also has enormous ramification in terms of how those at the bottom end of the scale, the urban poor, those who suffer most from inequality, are either pushed out to the edges of the city or slammed up against those who are richest. And I think that dynamic is very interesting and not necessarily negative. And I think you were saying a moment ago that, you know, some of the issues that we were discussing in the big cities, whether it's New York or London, Paris or Los Angeles, of inequality, of infrastructure, of health, are exactly the same ones, but sort of with a different sort of profile. Again, if I think of the negative aspects of the Latin American city, one can't get away from an issue of safety, fear, and violence. I mean, the statistics of murder rates are still pretty shocking. I know they've got better, but São Paulo and Bogota have something like 24, 25 sort of murders per 100,000 people, while in London, for example, there are 2, in New York it's 6. So we're talking about orders of magnitude which are still significant, obviously fueled by issues of drugs and gun crime and all that. And there are massive efforts, which again I've witnessed in terms of actually dealing with that. But there's some discrepancies. São Paulo has a very high car ownership, 368 cars per 1,000 residents. That's just a little bit above London. Above London, where the average income is $52,000 a year, and in São Paulo is $12,900. So, you know, these discrepancies are dramatic. So the question, I think, for all of us is, as these economies grow, which they are, and that's, of course, a great promise. That's not the case in, say, African countries or African cities. As these economies grow, consolidate themselves within the sort of brick infrastructure of global economies, how do you manage that, and how do you manage it both at the physical level? That's one of my interests, of course, but in case of the four speakers, very much in terms of the dynamics of social infrastructure and the institutions of change. I mean, again, if I stand back and I think, well, where have I seen amazing innovation in the way that you deal with a favela, with informal settlement? Well, Chile, Elemental, a young architect working there, has come up with, I think, a model which could be totally transferable everywhere in the world, you know, and it comes from there, and it's related to place, and I think that's fascinating. We think of São Paulo, and we think even of Mexico City, and we'll hear this, of course, in Lima. There are initiatives which are really engaging people and requalifying and giving greater dignity to the city centers, which had been abandoned for years. No-go areas, just like the inner city in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, which has remained, unfortunately, that. And I think I see that as an incredibly positive thing. If I think of transport, of course, Curitiba got there. Jamie Lerner, the great mayor from there, you know, we're maybe tired of saying it, but one has to celebrate it. It's fantastic that 25 years ago, it was not sexy to talk about using your garbage to pay for your ticket. I mean, it was brilliant as an idea. And mayors in Bogota, of course, in Medellin and elsewhere, have done similar things to sort of invest in the public transport in a way which is not expensive. And I think this is one of the key things, I think, that comes out from the Latin American ethos, is that you do things with the resources you have. You don't wait for the World Bank to give you 50 billion, right? You don't. You just get on with it. And I think that is incredibly, that's perhaps when I try and understand why I feel energized when I come back from visiting your countries. I think that is the case. And clearly, just in terms of civil society, there's a parallel to many of the things I've said where the initiatives are really extraordinarily positive. So those are, so that would be a sort of framing in terms of the issues that I'm interested in and I hope we can address. But we have 4 speakers who in their very, very, very different ways, I think will certainly begin to add dimensions to this mosaic of what is a Latin American city, and what, most importantly, what are the big problems facing us still today, and what are you going to do about it? I think that's something really important. I think the audience should come away feeling, you know, is there still the energy that I'm talking about? And if so, what might you come away with and think about this? Now, to do this, we have, as I say, speakers from different Latin American countries. We have Jorge Abrahao, who is the president of, in and of itself, an extremely interesting institution, which I know you'll be talking about, which is called the Instituto Ethos, so the notion of ethics very much at the heart of it, which really brings business to the heart of this discussion. Too often, I think there is a sense that it's all up to the public sector and civil society to resolve the problems. I think clearly the mood has changed. There isn't the money to go round, perhaps, to do that. But I know that Antonio Celia, who is based in Barranquilla in Colombia, in many ways impersonates, I guess, the sort of person that the Instituto Ethos is sort of wanting to work with, because he's not only one of the greatest entrepreneurs running the gas company and many, many other things. We could spend hours talking about what he's done. So much so that he won. I got Entrepreneur of the Year in this is interesting. Entrepreneur of the Year in 2009. But most importantly, the same guy, this guy, also won the Social Leader in 2010. So the notion that you invest the same skill set in a way to make money on a gas company, provide people with natural gas, good thing, doesn't ruin the environment, but then bring that back into society is incredibly significant. And we also have Mariana Escorza, who is working on different sort of fronts, different organizations, most recently involved with Lima Como Vamos, which is one of these fantastic organizations which basically brings people together and raises the expectations of citizens. She's also worked in radio programs, which will be interesting to hear how that actually motivates people and engages them, and is behind a network of cities that is now connecting a series of institutions around Latin America. And then we will go at the end to Janaina Herrera, who actually is both Chilean but works in Rio on, specializing in the moment on the impacts of e-health, basically, how you can use contemporary technologies of the Ericsson variety that we just heard to actually improve people's health at the heart of the city. Absolutely central sort of issue. So we really do have quite a range of excellent speakers, and I'm now going to ask Antonio to kick off the discussions. I'd like you to all speak for around 5 minutes or so, and I'll call Richard Quest in if you go on too long.
No, 5 minutes. Thank you, Rick. I want to thank you, the Fundación Avina, my friend Diana Castro, for inviting me here. I'm not going to read, just a reminder. I want to share with you what has been happening in Barranquilla, Colombia, up north in the Caribbean in the last, say, 20 years, and how we entrepreneurs have been involved in all the most important city topics, city issues. I must begin saying that 20 years ago, Colombia was close to be a failure as a state. Today, Colombia is booming. And within Colombia, Barranquilla is growing even faster. Colombia transformed itself into a rural society 40 years ago, to a very dynamic urban society in very few decades. Regarding Barranquilla, we belong to the Caribbean region, whose GDP is below average in Colombia. So we can say the Caribbean region is a poor region. Reasons for that, many, among others. Barranquilla flourished between 1900 and 1940, when we were acting in an open economy. Commerce was free. We didn't have these models that came later. But after World War II, the central government decided to adopt the model of industrialization by import substitution. And that was terrible for the city. Now, times have changed. We have an open economy, and the city is growing again. Colombia is booming. Everybody in the financial market talks about Colombia. We are part of the CIVETs, this new group of shining star in the economy. We always put some names like BRICS, CIVETs. We're part of the CIVETs. But guess what? Although we have been growing at steady rates, 6% last year, maybe 5 to 5.6 this year, our inequality is very, very high. Our Gini coefficient is 0.56, average for Colombia. Barranquilla, 0.49, too high. Inequalities are a difficulty that we have to face, and in Colombia, those inequalities are clearly associated with the difference between the revenues of those people that got education and those who do not got education. So I think, and I was talking to Rick before, the problems that we face are different in our cities to the problems that other cities like Vancouver, London, Paris are facing. We are just in a different stage of development. So 20 years ago, we had problems in Barranquilla like no reliability at all on water supply, bad governments, poor institutions, terrible education. And we start working, we start getting involved. I think that the last point that called our attention was back in 1991 when we had a huge water crisis. So we decided to put some money without any interest different to recover the water supply system for the company, and we forced the mayor to take certain decisions. We said, you have to privatize this. It doesn't matter whether you like the scheme or not, but the thing is we have to find a solution. Now, we start then following up certain other topics. For example, the level of public debate was very low, and we decided to create a think tank to raise the level of debate.
Who is we?
We, when I talk we, we're talking about a group of entrepreneurs that come with me to these initiatives, and we share the same attitude, the same vision, and the same interest.
No.
Say that's
The private sector.
yeah, private sector. 12 years ago, the city was broken, and then we had created this think tank. We proposed a tax reform to widen the base of taxpayers, especially those owners of urban land, and dedicating that additional tax for education. How we came around with this bad government, we created the Como Vamos. Como Vamos is a system to raise the expectations, as you said, of citizens. It's a mechanism with very precise indicators, with objective criteria to follow up what the mayor is doing.
It means
Exactly.
It means how we're doing, right?
How we doing? It means, yeah,
Means-
it means how we doing. People speaking Spanish here? No much.
Right.
No, sorry. Sí, algunos, okay.
Yeah.
It means how we doing. How we doing to the mayor. That's what Mariana does in Lima. We started in Barranquilla with private initiatives, the Como Vamos in Barranquilla 7 years ago.
Right.
Then the other thing that we had is public service was a disaster. I also already said, we recovered the water supply companies, and interestingly, later on, the national government, the central government, copy, reply that system to make the model national scale with very good results, extraordinary results. I will say that in terms of public services, which is not a concern in developed cities, it's a concern, it was a concern 12 years ago in cities like ours, not anymore, because of a good scheme that was implemented initially in Barranquilla. Private investment in Barranquilla was very low. We created an agency for promoting investment in the city, mainly dealing with permits, corruption, delays, and all that. Happily, 10 years after the creation of Pro Barranquilla, and in the last 6 years, excuse me, we have had 200 new companies into the city with investment close to $1.5 billion.
Oh.
$1.5 billion. We have good government, that is that what we have today, and the other thing that we are working hardly is corruption and slow judicial solutions, local justice. We created an observatory of justice, and it's in place. So we created the Como Vamos, the Fundesarrollo, the think tank, agency for promoting investment in the city, and Pro Transparencia, which is an observatory of justice. And it's telling the society, we care, these are your rights. You have now, with precise indicators, how to claim for good governments. And it's getting a lot of results. A question that I maybe think—
Richard Quest is coming.
yeah, why we do this? This is a conception that we have in Colombia. Remember, we have had huge problems regarding the security. We can almost say that we are kind of survivors. We had a lot of difficulties that we are overcoming today. And there's also a tradition in Colombian enterprises. They began, or we began when, it all began when great entrepreneur Manuel Carvajal said 60 years ago, we cannot have healthy business in a sick society. So there is a, let's say, a school, a tradition of involvement of private entrepreneurs in the cities. Challenges for us, and you sent me an email yesterday precisely telling me I want you to mention concrete results. That's for a second session.
Yes,
But
yeah.
no, second on the round of
We'll come
questions.
back, yeah.
Okay.
Can you
But the challenges,
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
The difference in education is huge in Colombia. We have at the top private urban education, at the bottom rural public education. The gap is huge. Besides that, we are 45 in the world in these international exams, PISA teams. Education, inequality, and if the justice system doesn't work, you don't have prompt and effective justice, you are in trouble. Institutions and infrastructure. If you give me a chance, please, I'll refer to the challenge in building infrastructure that suits all these fast, dynamic growth that we have. Thank you.
But just to help us understand how your foundation actually works in cities, with schools, right? What do you actually do? I mean, you put money, but how do you measure success? Because I think that's very
important. This is a particular model of intervention where we basically train teachers and get involved the families. And I was telling Rick that we wanted to know how this was working because we put a lot of money through our foundation in education in our cities. So we use the same methodology that is used by the states to measure the impact of public policy, okay, with a baseline, and we measured that. The results were basically, it's a very complex analysis, but basically is those kids that goes to our schools, to our model of intervention, increase their results in the national exams by 25%. Consequently, the expected income in their lives is 9% more than those that do not have access to the model version. So it works. And that model is now being replied by the local government to expand it through all public schools in the city. So it's a private initiatives that show result, okay? And now the important thing is those experiments, they should, those that work, turn into public policy with good institutions, because It's nothing to do if you have a sound public policy and you don't have institutions to execute in an adequate manner.
I mean, the statistic that exam results have increased 25% over what period of time?
No, we measure that in the, for do
Okay.
that, do need 6 years, but then you cut at
Yeah.
1 year and saying after you have enough data, like in time series,
Right.
you need 5, 6 years to measure in an adequate manner
But
the
that
impact.
25% has, let's say, an 80, 90% impact in terms of future income. I mean, these are really initiatives that change people's lives. Margarita, sorry, Mariana.
Mariana.
Sorry, Mariana. You've been involved in, we already mentioned it, Antonio's already mentioned it, the Lima project, Como Vamos, as a sort of ground-up initiative in terms of raising expectations, awareness, but you're also involved now in a sort of network which takes presumably exactly these sorts of initiatives and broadcasts them to others. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yes,
both those aspects of your work?
of course. Well, thank you, all of you,
I think
to
put
be
the
here.
microphone a little bit closer and
Here,
speak,
it's okay?
speak loud.
Well, thank you, all of you, to be here and to have interest in Latin America. I think we are a continent, as Ricky told you, with high creativity and innovations in all our countries, and that's why we are proud of it. Well, I'm here in behalf of the Latin American Network of Fair, Democratic and Sustainable Cities. I work in the Lima Como Vamos Observatory. It's Lima, how are you? How are we doing? And as you already told us, it's a mechanism to keep the track on the government and the local government way of doing and public policies. Well, Latin America, maybe we can resume their biggest problems in inequality. That's actually what you already said, and that is quite a difference between the quality of the service in all the aspects, in education, in infrastructure, in water supply, and all that kind of situations. So we start taking advantage of a Colombian model, the Como Vamos movements a few years ago, and with the help and the investment and the confidence that Avina Foundation start making in all of the movements. Now we have 77 movements in 10 cities all over Latin America. So it really is a quick spread of the mechanism. And this model is actually a social accountability model. That's the way we like to call it. And my message here is that this model is working in Latin America, and it could work in different countries and different places. And it's working because we are gathering together the different areas of the society. We are gathering together as at the Colombian movements and as in Lima Como Vamos, at the academia with the high universities and the top ones in the country or in the city. We are bringing together the private sector, of course. We are bringing together the third sector, different civil societies, associations, and an important role is also the media. We have, with the partnership of different important newspapers and radio stations, that works through the same preoccupation, the same concern, which is the quality of life in the cities. And that's where we start working, and we have like really specific impacts of this Latin American network. One of them is, of course, the quality of life reports. We, in an annual base, almost in all the cities, we produce a survey and also an indicator report, which happened to be really objective, and it becomes a really important tool for governments. So the mayors are expecting which are the results for that year, and they are taking care about what our movements are showing as an evaluation of their work, but also as gathering also the expectations.
How many people are consulted in these surveys?
For example, in Lima, we make a poll for 2,000 people. It represents the whole metropolitan area of Lima. We divide the city in 5 different sectors, and we can have the representation for these different sectors also. So we start taking these expectations and start showing them not only to the decision makers, but also to the people, because the people actually know that something is happening in their cities. Of course, they receive the services, they are paying their taxes in most of the cases, but they maybe cannot really understand what the mayor or the authorities are really telling about it, or are they really telling the truth? It's something that people actually wonders about. So we also translate the information, and we make it in a friendly way, so anyone can take access to that information and also can use it in the different way they want, maybe so for investigation or researches, or maybe for the media, and so we can make it massive. And that's another of our impacts. We have the power to gather these ideas, these demands, these needs of the people, and gave it to the public policies makers. So they have to decide. Of course, this information and the power of the data, that's the other, the third impact we have, can be used for the right way or to the wrong way. You have the information, but you can use it like the same information to make a terrible urban project and destroy, I don't know, the public spaces or the forest in the city. But of course, you can use it in the good way. So that's why we also compare the data with all the urban areas, with the movements, and we are working really, really hard in having these indicators to be measured. If you can measure a policy, you even cannot prove it's working. So we are also taking care about the importance of measuring the data from public, from the state, and also from the people like us, like civil society and private sector projects. And finally, one of our biggest impact will be regarding the, we made some public policies recommendations. So we start looking around the projects of the different cities, and we have the goals plan. And the goals plan, in Spanish, it's the Plan de Metas, is a tool, a really important tool, and it's now in 29 cities in all over Latin America. And it's the way that the candidates for the mayor can bind their promises to a real urban plan. And they can put in this plan, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to invest on water resources, I'm going to invest in public spaces, and they can put specific measures so we can keep the track on that. So it's not that the citizens are telling the mayor, okay, now you have to do that. That's not the way it's working. The mayor offers something. The people decide it, and of course goes to a democratic election, and then the people also demand that the offer plan will become true. And this is also really working, so we can guarantee that they can reach the goals. And of course, if the mayor didn't put a particular goal that it's quite important to the city, they cannot be taking, well, you cannot, like, I don't know, say, hey, you're not doing that. But, well, of course, that's another places of public discussion where you can gather that information. So, and the media, and you asked me at the first, Ricky, how is the role of the media? Well, it's really important to take this information into massive way. For example, in Lima, we have a radio program that speaks mostly in, well, all the weeks about urban issues. And we have in this particular station, we use the open phone. So people just call and ask the mayor that we maybe invite in that particular show, or maybe ask the secretary of, I don't know, culture, and they start asking, and they always answer them. And of course, we got this as one of our sources of how to feel the temperature of the people. One way is, of course, the service and all this information, which is always being compared to the indicators and to the data, but also is this kind of opinion in media and in so different other ways. Well, my message, as I already said, it was to show you that these different movements in Latin America are working, and they have been changing public policies and have been gathering together the citizens with the people. I want to ask you, maybe how many of you as regular citizens really get involved in the city, in your city issues? Maybe someone goes into the, well, I don't know, Peru have the participant budget, or there's some other mechanism.
This is a survey of the room. So how many of you get involved
Yeah.
in your cities? Hands up. Wow.
Half and half.
And
I guess you wouldn't be here otherwise. I
Yeah.
guess that's it.
And that's
Yeah.
important because people in the regular day, in their daily, they don't really care about it.
You talked about the radio program and surveys, and just linking what was said by the CEO of Ericsson to, in a way, what you're talking about. I mean, do you see that access to, say, mobile phone, however cheap or extortionate, I don't know, actually makes that process much easier in terms of engagement? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing?
Yeah, I think it makes it quickly. Yeah, so you can really find a situation, you can take a picture, you can put it on a website, and you can say, hey,
And another question, I mean, for someone, you're working across the range, it seems to me, you're connecting with the people in your city, say through the radio, that's a very direct connection, actually. You run Lima, How Are We Doing, as an organization. But you've moved plane. You're into this world of networks and everything else. And this is maybe this reflects more my own bias, but do you think that building these networks gets you to where you want to be? What I'm saying, there's a risk sometimes, I feel, that if you get away from the sort of incredible density of connections and knowledge of the DNA of the place, the people, the faces, the smells, the industry, it becomes a bit of another network, you know, that people, like-minded people sit in places not unlike this and share experiences, and then what happens? Do you have that feeling? Is there a risk, I guess?
Well, I think that this networking and that's why I'm asking all of you if you really engage in some activity within your city. Not only the service, but I also think that there's not much of a participation, a really participation of the people. So there are people like really complaining but not doing anything. So that's the way we want to link it.
Are there any particular questions on these two presentations before we sort of widen out? Because they're very, very specific points that have been made, and I don't want to, in a way, lose that. Are there any particular comments or questions? Have we got a microphone? So please tell us who you are, and don't spend more than 30 seconds.
Yes, hi. I'm
Really be precise, please.
I'm Sasha Haselmeyer from Living Labs Global. One question to both of you. You're identifying all these challenges through your surveys. How are you looking for solutions to those challenges? How are you advising the cities not just on policy, but actually technical means, practical means to solve those? How do you catalog this?
So it's sort of, how do indicators make people happy? A bit,
Yeah,
no.
I mean, the
Hi,
solutions.
Antonio.
I mentioned challenges, education. This take times. I mean, to raise the level of education, the public education in Colombia takes time. We recently brought a very important advisor to work with the Ministry of Education, and they finished the work 2 months ago. So we know exactly what to do to have quality of education in Colombia. However, one of the challenges, besides this challenge itself, is that education in Colombia is decentralized. So it depends on the cities, it depends on the majors. So the job that we're doing through another foundation that we have, Empresarios por la Educación, these entrepreneurs for education, in which the message is we do care for education, is go and visit all the majors, expounding the plan to them. It's going to take time. And the other thing is, the other decision that's going to be taken soon is that we decided, this is a decision by the Minister of Education, we are part of that board that helps the Minister of Education, is to have the national tests, national exams every year. So it's easier to follow what's happening year to year.
So
Before this, they were 3 years ago. So you kind of lose dynamic and don't know exactly the results when you have measurements every 3 years. So,
Your answer in terms of that question is that you actually set up a model,
yeah.
which then, if it works, becomes a solution. I mean, and that's Mariana. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the answer is about the networking. We handle a lot of academic and technical contacts in
No,
our...
but with respect, it isn't, because I think he's asking you, how do you find the solutions? You can
No, yeah, and that's why
not just by you can't do that by networking.
No, but really we can, because for example, I'm not speaking about the network of Latin American movement, I'm speaking about the network inside the countries.
Right.
For example, we have a presentation with some people of the government of these local districts, and they ask, okay, we have really big problems with the garbage, or we have really big problems with our open data system. We don't know how to make it, but we have to. Okay, well, so there's a really good experience in this other district, so then I can handle can make you the contact.
So you observe,
Yeah.
and you pick out, and you recognize and talk about
About
examples
the
around.
good practices.
So they don't come up with the solutions themselves then. Right. Okay. I want to move on to Brazil and to Jorge, but I won't come. Okay. Yes, I want a question from you. But microphone, please. Tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Caroline Moser, and I'm from the University of Manchester in the UK. And I have been working in Colombia for 40 years. So I want to start by congratulating you and congratulating what you are doing. Puedo hablar en español si quieres, pero hay gente ahí que no habla en español. Okay? Entonces, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you, because I think Colombia has an extraordinary history of the collaboration of private sector with government and also with civil society. So I think it's fantastic. But my question is about sustainability. Because when I hear you talk, and I think it's amazing, because Barranquilla, as you know, and as you said, has some extremely important problems, also around not just inequality, but also about race and the Afro-Colombian population. So some very specific problems. But when I think about it, I'm reminded of people like Rodrigo Guerrera, who was your mayor in the 1990s in Cali.
And now again.
And again.
He
And
was
I'm
elected
thinking
mayor
about
3 months ago.
Marcos. And I'm thinking about people who come and go. So my real question is about the sustainability of these types of initiatives. As you move on, governments change, some people get richer, some get poorer, some have more time, some have less time. So thank you. I just want to ask about
Excellent question. The Rodrigo Guerrero did a great job when he was mayor 15 years ago. Now he's back. He was elected mayor of Cali, city that has a lot of trouble. What do? It's difficult to have a continuity in terms of the policies. But if you have instruments like how we're doing, if you have private institutions following what's happening, the political markets will work at the end of the day. That's our bet. If the Como Vamos, again, how we're doing, start raising the expectation of people, that's going to be a benchmark for the future. We did that in Barranquilla. We had a very good government, type of Rodrigo Guerrero 5 years ago, and now it's continuity. The mayor is part of the team. It's part of the team that we had before. Again, if you do that, the civil society with instruments, claiming for better government, for education, putting that in the media, the messages are very important. The political markets will work. This means democracy will punish those that do not do the job and will give a premium to those that do.
So the answer is not as simple as we would like it, is that keep on electing the same mayor or the same sequence of mayors who, for example,
The same policies.
but there's a shared values to what matters in the city and what should change. And I think that's a lot of the work that you are doing with your organizations, is sort of putting those values out there in many ways. And I think that's quite
But
interesting.
an instrument about for doing that is to have like a sustainable city vision and an urban plan. If you don't have that, you can like be jumping from, I don't know, right wing to left wing,
sure.
and that's not right, because you have like this city going through a mess, and that's actually is one of the challenges I will come to talk about.
We
in
will
a
have
minute.
time to come back later, but I think it's important to have the other two speakers be able to join. I was reminded by what is being said of something that went together with colleagues. We ran the Deutsche Bank Urban Age Award in different cities. 3 years ago visited, spent a lot of time in São Paulo when Jose Serra was the governor of São Paulo. And we identified there, this is a prize which just looks at projects which transform the space of the city and bring together different alliances. Right? And there we saw an amazing energy in terms of actually small-scale projects which had a very environmental sort of dimension to them, recycling, all that, but which was much more than just sort of making the city green, but a lot about sort of creating the sort of political alliances that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I think that was an interesting dimension, which also had sort of, I guess, even economic and consequences in terms of possible business. Jorge, will you talk a little bit about your organization, the foundation, the Instituto, Ethos, and also how you see this dynamic of change affecting certainly São Paulo, Rio, and other Brazilian cities?
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to share some experiences in Brazil. The Ethos Institute aims to helping companies manage the business in a socially and a responsible way. Recently, considering the challenges, the social and environment challenges, we developed with the companies and the no-governmental organizations a platform for inclusive, green, and responsible economy. The idea is to stimulate actions to integrate the social, environment, and ethical dimensions. The platform is to stimulate actions to integrate these dimensions. The platform has an important relation with cities, and I'd like to talk about these relations with the cities. This is our platform that I talk about. When we think about a sustainable city, it is this kind of image that comes to our mind. It's a place where new technologies have been applied, taking advantage of political, social, and economic consolidating institutions. Brazil cities are rather different than European cities. Brazil has a population of 200 million people, from which 85% live in cities. 85% live in cities. A city like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro embrace challenges from both developed and underdeveloped urban centers. Because of this, we need more than goodwill. We need solid means to access progress and have a mind that politics and social participation are fundamental to going into scale. This is a photo from Rio de Janeiro, the slums, the big buildings, and the beach. This kind of photos we repeat in all cities in Brazil, in every cities in Brazil. In order of helping our cities towards sustainability, we have developed the Sustainable Cities Program in partnership with Nossa São Paulo Network and the Sustainable Cities Network in Brazil. It is based on our platform and comprises commitments, social mobilization, transparent tools, and more than 300 indicators divided into 12 dimensions. It has been applied to cities like São Paulo with impressive impact. São Paulo is the largest South American city with more than 11 million people, from which 1/3 live in slums or precarious residences. Every day, 1,000 new vehicles enter into circulation in the city. Average citizens spend around 2.5 hours daily commuting. 25% of all its drinkable water is wasted daily. For a comparison basis, in Tokyo, this waste represents less than 5%. We waste 5 times more than the Japanese people. After knowing the city indicators in the 12 dimensions, a key point of the program is to obtain political commitments for mayors. In São Paulo, the mayor, Kassab, committed to the program at the beginning of his term in 2008. This is the photo. His commitment was translated into a local agenda. This agenda, comprising more than 200 projects, linked to reportable and measurable targets. The performance of the indicators has been periodically reported to civil society, representing a considerable advantage towards transparency and social control. The annual assessment of the indicators has had significant impact in the popularity level of the mayor himself. This is the indicators, the 12 dimensions, and one example of the indicators in São Paulo. We can see the inequality between the different districts in São Paulo. And we have more than 300 indicators. We know the challenge of the city. The society know the challenge of the city. It's no coincidence that after reaching only 30% of the city targets in 3 years, the mayor approval level has dropped from 61% in 2008 to only 34% in 2012.
So maybe a good idea not to this time publish targets, but anyway.
After beginning implement its most complex city in the country in order to generate exemplary practices and be tested to the limit, the program has been adopted by 19 other important Brazilian cities, besides being linked to a network of 48 Latin American ones. At the end of the present year, all the Brazilian cities will elect their new mayors, and the program has delivered a massive marketing campaign directed to voters. This is the campaign to the voters. I vote sustainable. Mm. This is a important soccer player in Brazil.
He was on the jury for the prize that we gave.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And the campaign to the candidates, to the people, to the cities, and to the candidates. Candidate, either you recycle your ideas or we recycle our vote. As an initial result of the campaign and mobilization efforts, the program has been adopted by around 300 candidates. Now we have 300 candidates that adopted the program, and by 2 political parties as a whole. Another important conquer was that in São Paulo and other cities, local legislative bodies have passed bills incorporating the program into the municipal law. And nowadays, there is also a Brazilian constitutional amendment bill aiming at making the program mandatory to the federal government to the 27 states and to all the Brazilian cities. That can be one of the most important political change in Brazil in many years. Finally, we believe that it's a new political way, especially in developing countries. Only through massive civil society and private sector engagement, besides executive and legislative through commitment, we can go forward in the sustainability agenda and overcome our great challenges. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jorge, for that comprehensive account. Very, very interesting on that. And I think what I'd like to do, because we have about 20 minutes left, is go straight to Janaina to talk about the work that you're doing in Rio on the health work, and then come back to some of these bigger issues in São Paulo and the network and the sustainable agenda that you talked about.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. I'd love to ask later how you convince a mayor to sign and commit for your indicators.
Depression, the civil society, depression.
The media.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about our project in Rio. So we're working in the field of mobile health, and what's original with our project is that most of mobile health projects try to address physical distance, isolation, extreme conditions. We decided to work in the very heart of the city to address the urban divide in the field of access to healthcare. And what are the challenges we found in Rio that are globally relevant? Basically, Rio is aging faster than the rest of the country. And so for us, it was a prefiguration of what's going to happen elsewhere in India and China. And basically what's happening is with development and urbanization, people are living longer, eating richer food, and they're exercising less. As a consequence, there's a really fast process of expansion of chronic diseases. They're spreading like an epidemic in developing countries. That's a fact. And they're silent killers, but they're very efficient. And in these cities, healthcare services are not designed to cope with this new burden. And they're already fighting all diseases, communicable diseases. And this is, in particular, a problem, a challenge in the underprivileged areas, in the favelas, where you have a specific problematic of access due to the topography, the roads, the lack of space to build infrastructures. So we started asking ourselves with the New Cities Foundations and partners, how can we leverage mobile health technology to help tackle this challenge? And so basically what we did is we started talking with the City Hall, which is here in the room, and we partnered with them and decided to work in symbiosis with their priority agenda in terms of healthcare coverage. And they have very ambitious targets. They reached 23% in Rio. They want to reach in 2016 70% coverage of primary healthcare. So we decided to set up a task force with other partners, General Electric, Orange, Cisco, the City Hall, and the researchers of the University of Rio. And what our strategy was that basically we want to empower the primary healthcare clinic, and we want to entitle the citizens of the community. And it's only by bringing these two elements together that we can increase access to healthcare. So we decided to empower this family clinic with a mobile kit designed by General Electric that is filled with tools, diagnosis tool. It's not treatment, it's diagnosis. Including a V-scan, which is a very small device. It's amazing. It's ultrasound, and you can see the baby, you can see the lungs directly. And this mobile health kit will be connected directly to the database of the clinic, so that the doctors, you have to just imagine doctors going out, walking up the favela to go visit and bring healthcare to the homes of patients who are the most isolated and vulnerable. We're talking about basically elderly people who have no healthcare coverage. We're talking about people who are socially isolated due to Alzheimer or mental conditions, and those who have mobility issues. So I have a few pictures, and I actually forgot to turn it on. So this is the issue of urban design in Rio. And this is a concrete image of the favela Santa Marta, where we'll be implementing this project. And this is the area they cover, 12,000 people. And this is the image of the favela, which is really at the foot of the Corcovado, in the heart of the city. And this is what we want to be doing. So what are the expected benefits of our pilot? There are immediate benefits for the patients. That's the first element. They will have no more need to commute to go to a hospital to do the exams. There will be no more queuing or waiting for just an appointment and then coming back to the doctors with the results. And they will also reduce the costs related to commuting. The medium-term benefits will be more for the clinic themselves due to efficiency gains. They will monitor better the database. That's one important element. The second element is that there will be a better triage, meaning that the patients will not end up in emergency or directly to the queuing in the public hospital. They will have directly a diagnosis at an early stage. And this is the last long-term benefit we're hoping to achieve, is basically a better health for the community, for the favela, thanks to early detection and early action. Maybe as something I learned that is quite shocking, diabetes, if it's not diagnosed at an early stage, you can reach a point where you basically have to cut a leg. So you imagine the cost that has for the family and the community. So if we can prevent that, I think it will be a very meaningful experience. So there will be a team of independent researchers, Brazilian researchers from the University of Rio, monitoring our project. 2 minutes. And we just hope that if we succeed in this project, we would have proved, and I think that's relevant globally, that you can afford as a city hall to extend healthcare coverage in a cost-effective way while having a quality relationship with the patients. So let me just finish with a picture of the team. Here they are. We were with them a few days ago. They say hi, and they're very excited about the project. We hope to be back in 2013 with clear answers to our questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And it's very, very, very good to get a sense of what it's like under the skin of these environments and how important it is to be able to act right at the heart of the difficult areas, as you were saying earlier in your experiences, to actually place the schools of high quality, even as a physical environment where they matter most, as sort of part of that process. Now, I have a number of questions, but I think what we should do is open it up in these last 10 minutes and pick up on the last two in particular and generalize outwards. So, gentlemen over there, please keep your statement or question short.
Hazem Galal from PricewaterhouseCoopers, based in Rio right now. Very few Latin American cities have actually had strategic plans. It wasn't until like a few years ago that they started thinking long term. And you take that and you couple it with election cycles every 4 years, whether it's state or municipal elections. I wanted to hear, how as civil society, you've been really trying to guarantee continuity, not to mention, all the transparency and corruption issues.
Thank you. Jorge, do you want to address that?
Oh, I think that it's a big problem, no? The short time, the short vision of the governments, but it's a problem of the CEOs too in the companies. We have a short time to our plans. The plans are the time that we are in the power. And this kind of program is made to the society. Is a plan to the society. We have more than 600 social movements involved in this program. So we can guarantee the continuance of the program. Independent of the government, the mayor. We think that with these movements and the social control, we can think in long terms to the city. So we have research to the indicators, we have research to the perception of the people in the city and the problems, and so it's a long-term program for us.
Mariana, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, please. I think that our movements are, well, we are not involved in politics in the traditional way. We are making a new kind of politics. And this is obtained by being independent, by being objective, and by not have any relation with a political party. So even a mayor, my actual mayor of Lima, is from a particular political party, and the next one is going to be to the other wing in the tendency, in the trend. It's okay, because we are going to put people aware about the sustainable plan, about the vision that they are working, and we don't care who did come. It could be a great mayor or it could be a really bad one, but we are still going through information and through awareness about how is the plan and how, if you do not follow it, you will be losing money. For example, no, it's like really ground-based it.
One comment to just demonstrate how it works. We had the most popular mayor in Colombia ever recently in Barranquilla. And himself, he was very aware of the results of how we're doing. ¿Cómo vamos? He was all the time checking in order to improve in the next report. Every day observing the results of ¿Cómo vamos? So it makes the mayors to make an effort to do things better. It works.
It's interesting, Mariana, and something you've written elsewhere, that despite inequality, poverty being such a big theme, that actually when you ask people, they don't necessarily describe that as being a major problem.
Yeah, we
so
have
I'm fascinated by that issue. Wait, okay, hold on. Yeah.
Well, yes, that's
explain that a bit.
Yeah, in Latin America, as inequality is one big issue, it's not in the public awareness. So people are speaking about, okay, they have to spend a lot of time in the traffic, or they are going to have really, really bad health system, but the really knowing that there's like a really, really little people that have all the money and have all the access to private infrastructure and services, while the big ones are not. It's quite not a really big discussion issue, but we are making some changes on that. We include a question about inequality in our recent poll.
It's very unlikely you're going to have urban citizens in Latin America or anywhere else going out on demonstrating we want a strategic plan. It's not going to happen. Questions?
Thank you. It's not really so much a question, it's in
Who are you?
response to
Tell
the
us who
question.
you are. Tell us who you are.
I'm sorry, my name is Enrique Lamnitz. I work in a not-for-profit in Mexico City, and I'm from Mexico City. And I actually consider, this is about the question about continuity that you asked, which I think is a very interesting point, because right now I consider that the third sector in Mexico is, I feel like I found the most exciting place to be working in the world. No, I think that the third sector in Mexico at least, and I think maybe in the rest of Latin America, is really in a very exciting place. And no, what I think is in relation to this continuity thing, right now Mexico, is going through the election process, and actually what I think is standing out is that the third sector and the private sector are actually the institutions that are able to provide continuity. The government right now is in this transition moment, and it has a lot to do with diversifying the sources of your income and support. But actually, I think the communities are starting to look to us as people that will still be there after the election cycle. And so I think that this is actually an interesting moment when third sector can provide greater continuity in some cases than the election.
I think what is interesting from all presentations is that information is part of that continuity, which I must say for me is a total novelty. Very interesting notion that just by putting things out there, in a way independently of the political cycle, you create aspirations and you create the monitoring process that you showed in Jorge.
Yeah, I'd like to complement one thing that I forgot is about the corruption. It's a very important issue to my country, yes, the integrity and the corruption. And for this, in the same way, we built a program called Brazil, you know, we will have the World Cup and Olympic Games, and London, Rick, will have the Olympic Games this year, yeah? And in this, it will be an investment of $20 billion, no? How can you control this? So we build a plan, a program called Clean Games inside and outside the stadiums. So the idea is to build committees, yeah, and with the society, the entities, to control the investment and to make transparency to the civil society.
Okay, thank you. Question in Portuguese, which will be translated.
Bom, eu gostaria de perguntar para o pessoal do New Cities que está fazendo trabalho no Rio. O Rio tem quase 30% da população dele submetido a um governo paralelo, que é o governo do tráfico. Os traficantes é que controlam as favelas do Rio de Janeiro. Toda vez que algum movimento social, algum artista precisa fazer uma gravação, um filme nas favelas do Rio, ou algum trabalho dessa natureza, precisa ou pagar ou pedir permissão aos traficantes para poder gravar na favela.
Now, will you tell us what the question is?
Yeah.
It's for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for me, I believe. It's talking about parallel government in the underprivileged areas, which are quasi-militias, and you need to ask permission or pay to do a concert or to do an event in the favela.
A minha pergunta é, esse trabalho que vocês iniciaram nas favelas do Rio, vocês tiveram que pedir permissão a esse governo paralelo para poder realizá-lo?
So the question is, did we have to ask permission to do this?
Okay. And can you answer it?
Yeah, no, we didn't have to. No, it's all about the specification policy of the city hall. It's really amazing. Basically, it's a pacified favela. The gangs are out and it's peaceful, and the community is welcoming any public services coming in. So we had amazing welcoming from the community, and it's not an issue we encountered.
Okay, we have time for probably one other question, and I'm going to ask all of you in a moment to just very briefly say, if you wanted the next mayor of São Paulo or whatever city you're in to introduce a major policy change, or the president of the country, what might that be? So, but one more question, lady here.
Hi, I'm Carla Belitardo. I head sustainability and market development for Ericsson in Latin America. So I would like just to make a connection to what we saw before with our CEO speaking about networked society. Okay, so I would like to ask maybe Jorge and Antonio, or also you, how do you see then these countries, Colombia, Brazil, Peru? They have the plan now of increasing the broadband penetration. So have Viv Digital in Colombia, we have national broadband in Brazil. How do you see in the environment that you live and that you work, the PPPs, the public partnership and private partnership, working with this to increase broadband penetration in order to promote sustainable development? What I mean is, we've seen different angles. In Chile, we were more towards private. In Brazil, we tried to do more public.
The question is very clear.
Yeah.
Let's have an answer.
How do you see? Please comment on this.
Quickly.
Thank you.
I think that's happening in Colombia already. That's a technological reality. However, best results than public-private partnership is a public policy with good institutions. That is when you really empower the whole solution.
I think that it's a good way, but we need to we have problems in Brazil with the relations between private and public. So first, I think that we need to we need to know the relations and to regulatory these relations between the private and public and private and public, to put these PPPs in the way.
Okay, let's wrap up because of time, but I want you all to answer the question of which policy, one policy.
Only one. First childhood education. We have many children out of the system from 0 to 5.
Yeah.
That is a key issue for their lives. If you don't close that gap at the beginning, it will be very difficult to close the gap that create from having children in school, I don't have it. That, in my opinion, is
The
where we have a great impact.
The prize we gave in Cape Town last month was for a group of
How do you
mothers.
say that in English? First child
Hmm?
education.
The-
First
the-
stage
well,
is
no,
education.
it was exactly for an initiative of this sort, which
Okay.
dealt with the 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds.
Okay.
Well, I will, as we have a lot of problems and we need a lot of public policies, I will rather take like this meta public policy that is about information actually. Information is power. Our governments doesn't have much information, not well organized, not updated. So their decisions are based in irregular information and almost non-information. So if I want something to be addressed in Peru is to build some really, really strong structures and IT technology so we can keep track in every area that involves a city planning and a city.
Jorge?
One thing only, to make a mandatory program to all governments to present in 90 days after elected a sustainable plan to the city, states and country.
I will go back to Boris Johnson, say that in London. Janaina?
I hesitate, but I would say the field of education is key, and access to education for the poorest in the city, I think, would have a key impact on future development.
Right. Well, thank you all very much for taking part. And I hope you come away, as I did in my travels to many of the Latin American cities we talked about, positive and energized by the wonderful passion, intelligence, and mobilizing effect of your different initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.